It's a Monday episode of Locked On Grizzlies, and Morant and Zach Edey are dropping bombs from beyond the arc. Damichael and I are going to talk about how excited we are about that possibility. Plus, national media once again finding ways to make me angry on this Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. 9th in the Western Conference. Seriously, ESPN? Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On Grizzlies. It is I, one of your hosts, Joe Mullinax, and it is always good when I get to say one of your hosts, because that means my wonderful partner, Damichael of the Commercial Appeal there in Memphis, Tennessee, is also along for the ride. We are your co-hosts for this Monday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Thank you so much for being with us. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. We are free and available wherever you get podcasts as proud members of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team each and every single day. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe wherever you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. We have a wonderful following. We're getting closer and closer, partner, to another milestone in terms of subscribers over on YouTube, inching slowly but surely towards 4,000. I think by the time opening night hits, we should be over 4,000, and that's wonderful. Hopefully that continues to grow, and hopefully our audio subscribers, our audio downloads. Check us out on YouTube as well as Amazon, Apple, Spotify. Anywhere you get a podcast, make sure Damichael and I are with you everywhere you go. Damichael, wonderful to be back with you, sir. You had a great solo show on Friday. Much appreciated for covering that for us. And obviously today, last week, I should have known, Damichael, that it was too good to be true, right? It was too good to be true that they were national.
We just talked about the love, right?
Being full of love and respect for the Memphis Grizzlies. Just like that, ESPN snaps us back to reality. Up there goes gravity, B-Rabbit style. And Memphis, not only are they picked to finish 9th in this ESPN article, the Western Conference projections, but they are tied for 9th with the Houston Rockets and the Los Angeles Lakers, which essentially means they win tiebreakers in this scenario that ESPN lays out, but they're basically one game away from potentially not being in the playoffs at all. Some of the teams that are in front of the Memphis Grizzlies on this list, partner, teams like the Sacramento Kings, who they have as the 6th seed in the Western Conference. Teams like the New Orleans Pelicans. Everybody's super excited about the skinny Zion for some reason. The Golden State Warriors, which might be the most egregious pick. Golden State pretty clearly got worse, at least on paper. And again, that maybe is part of the conversation we can have here, Damichael. But the teams that are in front of Memphis, the fact that they're tied with the Rockets and the Lakers, like, to me, the Lakers have a bit of a gripe here too. I struggle seeing a team led by LeBron James and Anthony Davis not being in the top 6 or 7 conversation. And I'm sure ESPN would argue it's only a game or two away. They are in the conversation. But still, looking at this list, Memphis at 9th, that seems way too low.
You just shot it out. B Rabbits there talking about, and I'm surprised you aren't losing yourself a little bit more.
I lost mom's spaghetti when I first read this list. I'll tell you that.
But the first thing that stood out to me when I looked at the list, Joe, was there is a respect towards the Western Conference that is given within these rankings. For example, 12 teams in the West in these record predictions are expected to have at least 43 wins. Newsflash, that's never happened in the Western Conference. That's never happened. That's never happened in the Eastern Conference. That's never happened in NBA history. We've seen seasons where I think it was 2014, where there was the 48-win Phoenix Suns team had the 9th seed. There have been seasons where it was some 50-win teams. I forget the exact teams, but the year 2007 in the Western Conference, there was a 50-win team that was on the outskirts pretty much that year. But the point is 12 teams with at least 43 wins is unheard of. And it's highly unlikely that it actually plays out that way, but it goes to show that the point is there are so many teams that go in this season. Like the Clippers are projected 12th. In the Clippers' mind, why don't they say, yeah, we lose Paul George, but we got James Harden and Kawhi to build around, and we have a nice core of good rotational players like Norm Powell who can give you 18 points a game. We have solid wing defenders. We have good low post presence players. A duo of James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, we might not win it all, but we feel like we can compete. I mean, they may think that. I don't know what they think. But with all that being said, getting it back to Memphis, you know, Joe, I've been higher on the Grizzlies, and I feel firmly like they'll be in the top 6. I think the conversation with the Grizzlies is top 4. Like, are they going to be in the top 4? That's the question for me. Top 6, I think they're in there. But you look at it, the teams that you mentioned, you know, Sacramento Kings being in the top 6, the Pelicans being 7th, the Warriors being 8th. And it's hard for me to see it playing out that way. We saw it. For one, you got the Pelicans 7th, and Ja Morant played 9 games. He beat the Pelicans twice in those 9 games.
Twice in 9 games, you've got this guy behind them. It's unbelievable.
Like, if there's any team we're questioning if the Grizzlies are head-to-head at least going to be better than. I mean, Ja didn't need – I mean, it's his first game back, and he beat him, you know, again. You know, so I think there's a little shift that needs to be happening. And it's funny to me, you know, how they come to the decision on some of these things. The funniest part to me, Joe, was the Houston Rockets are expected to take this jump in large part because they're a young team that's getting older. You know who's another young team that's getting older? Who so happens
Grizzlies.
Yeah, nothing more has to be said, Joe. They just dealt with injuries. So the fact that the Rockets are expected to take a jump that puts them on the level of a team that's won 50-plus games the previous 2 times they were healthy. I'm kind of confused on the logic with that. Like, I think the Rockets will be better. Well, don't get me wrong. But I think the Grizzlies are clearly a tier above them.
How much do you think it is people just not trusting the health, you know, how injured Memphis was? Maybe it's more of a question of their system. Is it a question of people not believing in Ja Morant, which, again, yeah. I don't know how you can apply that logic to the Grizzlies if you really want to. I don't think it's fair to Ja, first and foremost. I don't think it's fair overall. How can you apply that logic to the Memphis Grizzlies and then not apply it to a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, who they have as the number 1 seed in the Western Conference going into the preseason for the NBA, who had an unbelievably uncharacteristic healthy season? Like, the law of averages suggests that's not going to maintain, and I'm not wishing injury on anyone, but it feels like they're handling this in an unfair manner. They're giving benefits to some teams and the benefit of the doubt without giving it to Memphis. At least that's how it feels to me.
I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. My thing with the whole, injury could happen, unless there is a team that has 3 to 4 guys in a starting lineup who have a long list of Kawhi Leonard type injury history, that's when I would apply it to the equation. If you're talking about Desmond Baines for the world, like Desmond Bain, you know, missed more than half the season this year. And the year before, when he had that injury, that was the first major injury he had in his whole basketball life. Like, so there are some anomalies to the thinking here. And the point that I'm making is pretty much like you said. I'm looking at the teams that are ranked for the Grizzlies. I could just watch. This is going to be me just skimming through this really fast. Say, I look at Oklahoma City. I can say exactly what you just said. The law of averages. Do we trust that? You know, all those guys are going to be as healthy as they were this past season. Typically in basketball, it doesn't play out that way. You go to Minnesota Timberwolves, Mike Conley is another year, you know, older. Karl Anthony Towns had a major injury last season, got healthy towards the end of the season, but then the same thing goes for them. At Dallas Mavericks, I mean, that was more self-explanatory. Kyrie has had his, you know, availability hasn't always been his greatest strength. Luka Doncic, I don't know if you saw the video in Goran Dragic's game, but, you know, Tim McMahon and I used to talk about it, the reporter at ESPN a lot. Like, they used to talk about how Luka's weight is always a big thing in Dallas. And Luka looked like he'd been throwing down a couple extra cheeseburgers in this summer in that Goran Dragic's charity game. And then you can just keep going down the list. The Phoenix Suns, that was self-explanatory. KD, Kevin Durant's probably your best player, but he's 36. Bradley Beal, it's injury prone, you know, last 3-4 years of his career. Denver Nuggets, pretty much the same thing. Sacramento Kings, like the list goes on. You can go down all these teams. You can say there are potential injury concerns everywhere. So I take that out of the equation. We're just going straight off of talent. Now, if you want to get real nitpicky, and I've said this a bunch, and we'll have an episode where we kind of just deep dive this thing. And you pretty much know what I'm going to say, Joe. But the point guard thing, where if you take John Morant off the floor, I still have the questions on what happens next, how the Grizzlies can have a lot of success in that case scenario. But outside of that, like if Ja's on the floor, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr. on the floor, top 4 in the West, in my opinion.
Top 4 in the West. Bookmark it, Sharpie it, make a screenshot of this, screencast it, whatever it's called. Record me saying they're going to be a top 4 seed in the West. If that doesn't happen and they don't get injured or suspended, I want to stress that. If this team stays on the court for the majority of the season as they are and they're not a top 4 seed in the West, I will have my mind completely and totally blown. It'll be shocking to me. What about you? How do you feel about it? Let us know in the comments. Do you agree with Memphis at 9th? I have a feeling most of our audience will not. Let us know what you're thinking in the comments below. When we come back here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to continue on the hate, but a different kind of hate. 40 coaches, executives, members of organizations, under 40 list from The Athletic. 2 names are conspicuous by their absence, and 1 is kind of surprising by their inclusion for the Memphis Grizzlies. We'll talk about that next here on Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Game Time. I love going to live events. It is a blast. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a concert. It could be a game, a theater show, a comedy show. I have so much fun laughing and having fun with my family. It is a blast, and I hope to make more memories this coming fall. Hopefully you'll join me and use it with Game Time, and maybe you'll do it around Labor Day. 50% off for tickets like in the Diamondbacks Dodger series if you're out west. Lots of really cool stuff going on, and with specific teams in particular with Game Time. Game Time makes it easy for you to get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy with the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. And if you know anything about the ticketing industry, things can get challenging from time to time. That's not the case with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. I like that. Ooh. Damichael, we look at another major national sports covering organization, The Athletic. And for them, it's that time of year, 40s under 40 and long-term projections. Content gets thin for everybody this time of year, not just Locked On Grizzlies. The Athletic put out, and this is Mike Vorkanoff, he put out an NBA 40 under 40 list. This involves coaches, front office members, all those sorts of folks. And the inaugural list, which came out in 2022, included Zach Kleiman and Taylor Jenkins. Zach Kleiman being the Grizzlies GM, Taylor Jenkins being the Grizzlies head coach. Both of those players are still under the age, or both of those people are still under the age of 40, but they did not make the list this time around. It says in the article they didn't age out, they didn't make it again. They are no less deserving than the last time, but made way for new names and new faces. That feels like a cop-out. And then when you go to the person that they chose from the Grizzlies, Ariana Andonian, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that name, the director of player personnel for the Grizzlies, this is what they had to say on Ariana. They have made a steady ascent through the Grizzlies organization after taking a short sabbatical to get her MBA from Duke. That's very on brand for Zach Kleiman. Go Dukies, right? She had started her career with the Houston Rockets. Those who work with her rave about her attention to detail and scouting acumen. Now, I'm not going to put you on the spot, partner. You know the ins and outs of the organization. You know of Ariana. But it feels like to me, and this isn't meant to be disrespectful to her, I believe that she's an important piece of what they're doing. They wrote at the beginning of the article being up and coming and all those sorts of things. The fact that somebody like J.J. Redick, J.J. Redick was included in this article. And let me just read a little bit about what they say about J.J. Redick. Now, I want to remind everyone, in case you've forgotten, J.J. Redick has not coached a single game of NBA basketball yet. right? Like he has not been on the court as an NBA head coach. He didn't even coach Summer League, right? We talked about that here on the show. This is what was written by Mike. Redick was a well-known entity in the NBA before he landed on the sidelines, but he'll be in the spotlight next season as he takes control of one of the league's premier franchises. Redick got the Lakers job without any experience as a coach, which speaks to his basketball IQ and the respect he has earned across the sport, not only after 15 years in the NBA, but with his smart media appearances and basketball podcasts. I have a basketball podcast. Are you going to hire me?
Joe Mullinax will be hired by the Memphis Grizzlies.
What are we talking about? Content creators are getting jobs now? It's unbelievable to me that JJ Redick got included on this list at the age of 40. JJ is older than both Taylor Jenkins and Zach Kleiman. It's almost like they included him just to get the Lakers clicks. Like, it's embarrassing. This is not a legitimate list. And if I were Ariana, I would be frustrated by that inclusion because it diminishes her inclusion. That an executive of the year in the case of Kleiman, that's the one that really sticks in my craw.
Yeah, with Ariana, she's a name that I've heard a few times, around the organization and whatnot. And I mean, I think it said it in there, but she's 29 years old. Like she could be on a 30 under 30, list as well.
Very young.
And she has like a scouting background. I think it mentioned her being in Houston, but in Houston, I think that was kind of her role with the Rockets. Like she was kind of like pretty much a scout for the Rockets. So she is one of those, type of voices within the Grizzlies, front office, which if you've known anything about the makeup of that front office lately, like, Zach Kleiman is a very smart guy, but he has has some people around him who he leans on. From the scouting standpoint, a decent amount. And the most popular name, of course, is Tayshaun Prince. But Ariana is another one, of that ilk as well, who's probably going to rise through this organization, in years to come. But getting back to your point about the others, Taylor Jenkins, Zach Kleiman, I feel like at this point, I'm not even surprised that Taylor Jenkins, isn't on here. Simply just because, the Grizzlies, the way this past season played out for them. And then even, the last couple years, when they won 50-something games, in the eyes of the national audience, they flailed out in the playoffs.
But Will Hardy is on this list. Will Hardy of the Utah Jazz, the mighty, fearsome Utah Jazz.
And that's what I was going to get to. I think when you look at the list in totality, and I was going to get to Zach Kleiman after that. But when you look at the list in totality, what I get is it gives me that they're looking for that flash. This list isn't for the consistent. I've just been, going about my business work for the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. There are a few people on there who meet that, but it's for the new flashy toys. Like I think of college football or basketball, or even in the NFL, when they hire the young 34-year-old coach who's this offensive, innovative coach who's going to bring these new ideas and things like that. We've seen it, a lot in the NFL lately and in college football too. Like, that's what this list gives me the vibes of. It's these younger, like JJ Redick. That's what he's thought of. He's supposed to be this super, high IQ, innovative guy that's going to put the Lakers in positions that they simply haven't been in over the past couple of years. And if that's the way they're looking at, Taylor Jenkins doesn't fit that mold, because Taylor Jenkins, exactly what you're going to get at this point. You're going to get a guy who emphasizes great, strong defenses and an offense that like gets up and down the floor. But then I was with Zach Kleiman, I'm a little bit more surprised that he's not on the list, because even if you take away, the injuries and whatnot, what happened with the Grizzlies this past year, I mean, he drafted G.G. Jackson in the second round. Then the year before that, he drafted Vince Williams in the second round. And it's like, he's finding some good second-round gems that started on two-way deals, in addition to, setting this Grizzlies front office, this franchise up for long-term success. There are some people on here like, Josh Barlstein is the first name that I saw that stands out to me. Not just he's the CEO. Chief Executive Officer for the Phoenix Suns, and he's 35 years old. He's basically one of those like high-powered guys. Like he's the son, of Mark Barlstein, which is the big-time agent. So, I don't have to say much more after that. Like sometimes I have my suspicions on why some names were included on the list, but at the end of the day, I think it was a solid list for the most part. I like the fact that they had some people from the National Basketball Player Association, the Coaches, Association as well included on there. But yeah, I'm a little confused as to why Zach Kleiman wasn't included. But yeah.
Well, no one's going to say that Taylor Jenkins is the sexy name, right? Like, I agree with you on that completely.
Yeah.
I like his beard, but beyond that, no one's really going to go and attach themselves to Taylor Jenkins on the national level. I think that when it comes to Kleiman, I struggle with, and you hit the nail on the head with the Suns one. There are literally NBA teams like the Rockets, I believe, that are betting on the Phoenix Suns failing miserably, right? Like they are fighting amongst each other to get pick swap rights, to get future Phoenix Suns picks because they think it's going to go so poorly. But yeah, he's one of the best 40 under 40 in the NBA. It's nonsense. Let Damichael and I know how you're thinking about this. Am I overreacting? Do you agree with Damichael that the Kleiman omission is a bigger eyebrow raiser than the Jenkins one? Hit us up in the comments and let us know what you're thinking. Before we get to our positive end note of the show, I do want to remind you to check out Locked On NBA as your second listen. They do a great job covering all the ins and outs of across the league. I'm sure they're talking about some of these lists and rankings themselves from the national perspective. All the analysis, all the quick hitting news that you need. Make Locked On NBA your second watch or listen later on today once you're done with Locked On Grizzlies. This episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by FanDuel. Big fan of FanDuel. I know Damichael is as well. You've heard us talk about it a lot, right? FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you this time around, and it involves all the fun going on with the NFL season getting underway. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5. That's right, just $5. You get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. The NFL season gets underway here in a couple of weeks. Fantasy football drafts are going on. All the excitement is building up to the NFL season kicking off, and you can be a part of it thanks to FanDuel and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV-based plan, you can watch every regular season afternoon Sunday game out of market. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Again, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Damichael, we'll get out of here on this. The idea of this team being excited about Zach Edey and John Morant videos, right? I think we had a couple of people in the comments on YouTube giving us a hard time a bit. It's that time of year. People are excited about watching videos on YouTube or on social media. And there's some truth to that, right? Again, I mentioned earlier,
for sure.
It's a hard time of year for the content creators when it comes to the NBA. And John Edey, or whoever they hire to do their videos, I know, Damichael, you probably know the answer to that. They're doing a good job with the content being created on the Ja side. Ja and Edey splashing threes, or at least trying to, working on their three-point shot. You and I have talked about this before, and I think that we're on the same page. I'm always hesitant to react to this because you always tell me stories about Steven Adams hitting 12 threes in a row at Grizzlies practice, and then he doesn't shoot a three in an NBA game seriously ever, right? So whether it's the role, what they're supposed to do in terms of scheme, they get these guys sign contracts. Part of that signature is they're being explicitly told what their role is going to be in the organization. So maybe they're working on this just to work on it, but how much should we really, Ja as a perimeter player makes a lot more sense. Should we really start Zach Edey to start, dropping bombs from beyond the arc here soon?
I wouldn't expect it. It's seeing it, the videos you're mentioning, shot by 9, John Morant's personal content creator. He's been with
Shout out to Shot by 9.
Yeah, shout out to Shot by 9. Does real good photography and videography work with that team. But yeah, you see it. They were down at SMU, pretty much the same. We talked about the workouts the other day between those two, but they released some more footage. And this time it was Josh shooting a three, Zach Edey come out and shoot the three as well. And more than anything, for one, Taylor Jenkins is going to give him the green light. Like, he will have that. Do I think he will shoot them? I talked to some people at Purdue about this as well. And they're just like, they saw it in practice as well. They saw him knocking down three-pointers, kind of like the Steven Adams in reverse. They saw Zach Edey knocking down the three-pointers in college and practices. So this isn't something like that's new. It's like, oh, wow, Zach Edey's learning the three-pointer. He used to knock these down in college, too, in practice, according to people that I talked to from Purdue. But at the same time, he didn't really shoot them in games, nor did he ever have to. And that's kind of where I am with this whole thing. Like, just with bigs in general, but I'm going to really emphasize it with a 7'4", 300-pound guy as long as he's playing with the Grizzlies. Like, it's just like, I didn't cover, Jonas while he was here in Memphis, but I'm sure it was a thing back then too. But when you have these guys who are pretty much walking physical advantages, at least 20, Zach Edey's going to be bigger, stronger, faster than probably at least 20 of the 30 starting centers, and maybe even more. So he's not going to have to shoot three-pointers. Like, his game will be predicated on the physicality of dominating inside, getting those offensive boards off the glass. When he's shooting three-pointers, that's taking him away from the offensive glass. So the Grizzlies will need him on the offensive glass. But with all that being said, I think it's a nice wrinkle. You talk about floor spacing. We looked at the Boston Celtics kind of winning the championship with this 5-out mentality. You look at the Indiana Pacers. Why did they have the best offense in the NBA this past year and one of the best offenses, statistically speaking, in NBA history? It was because of that 5-out playing style with Tyrese Halliburton kind of orchestrating everything, but Miles Turner and Pascal Siakam both being perimeter threats and willing shooters, not just I'm going to take one three-pointer in a game and then no, they will make you pay consistently from deep. So Boston did it, Indiana did it, and they were two of the best offenses in the NBA. I could see the Grizzlies kind of trying to slowly get to that mode a little bit more. But if you're gonna have Miles Turner shooting threes, you better have the Pascal Siakams and the Aaron Nesmiths who can crash the boards. If you're gonna have Kristaps Porzingis shooting three-pointers, you better have the Jason Tatums who can get you 8 boards a game crashing the boards. You get what I'm saying? Like, Memphis has to have those type of, and Vince Williams can be that type of player, I think. We'll see how Jaren continues to progress as a rebounder or whatever that becomes of that. But I like the idea, Joe. I'm going to leave it there. I like the idea. I don't want to see this guy. If Zach Edey's shooting 6 3-pointers in a game, it better be because he cannot have any inside success. But if there's a game, Joe, where he shoots 6 of 9 from the field, and he's like 6 of 6 in the paint, and he's 0 of 3 on three-pointers, you're going to hear me talking about it on here.
He shot too many three-pointers. Get your tail back in the paint. I'm with you. I think that we have to remember this is the time of year. John Morant's not going to go and work on the things that he's already elite at, right? Like, that might be part of a warm-up, or you just maintain that skill. They're actively trying to get better at things that aren't a part of their game currently. And that's the case for both Morant and Edey, whether it's the lack of attempts in college or whether it's the lack of success when Ja has attempted them in the NBA. They're just trying to improve and grow their games. And that's a positive development. You want those guys to be enough of a threat, especially Morant. I agree with you that Edey, it doesn't really matter. If Ja is enough of a threat from beyond the arc, it opens up so many different layers of his game that I'm sure we'll talk about much, much more as the offseason grinds forth here on Locked On Grizzlies. Let Damichael and I know what you guys are thinking. You can hit us up in the comments like we've been talking about all show, or you can let us know on X at Damichael C for Damichael. Follow me or hit me up at Joe Mullinax on X. How you're feeling about Edey and Ja dropping threes. I'm with Damichael. It's not necessarily much to do about nothing, but Ja Morant, Zach Edey, those guys are going to live in the two-man game, attacking the paint, lobs and floaters and those sorts of things. It's going to be more of that kind of speed. The next time we're together, again, this month of August, Damichael and I doing every other day episodes on the Wednesday edition of Locked On Grizzlies. Damichael, you mentioned earlier in the program, maybe diving a little bit deeper into some of the opponents or the logic behind Memphis being where they are, looking at why, outside of the Kendrick Perkinses of the world, why there's people that are so doubtful of what Memphis can be. That point guard question remains a major one. Maybe we take a closer look at ways that can be addressed if they don't make any other substantial roster moves.
Yeah, because that's a big one, right? Definitely want to discuss that. And we'll also add a couple other things to the show as well. We could have a special guest here from the Grizzlies, from the organization, potentially coming on the show. but maybe a couple players over the next couple weeks. So
let's go.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. Maybe we'll get some Memphis Grizzlies players on the show to give you some perspective and some inside stuff. So stay tuned for that.
I'm going to have to do my best to not fanboy if we get Desmond Bane. I'm just going to have to take some deep breaths. I know Desmond Bane, you have a different relationship. You cover the team, you're around him. I'd be like, oh my gosh, it's Desmond Bane. That's Desmond Bane. Very excited about what's coming down the pike. Damichael's doing great work over the commercial appeal. He's also doing great work helping us out in these dog days here on Locked On Grizzlies. So plenty of reasons to check in each and every time an episode drops, safe to say. Make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA once our episode here concludes. They do a phenomenal job covering the ins and outs of the league across the association from sea to shining sea. The NBA is covered very well over at Locked On NBA. Check them out. Like, comment, rate, review, subscribe. Not just to them, but to Locked On Grizzlies, of course, whether it's YouTube, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. Continue to make Locked On Grizzlies a part each and every time an episode drops of your Memphis Grizzlies and NBA content consumption experience. For Damichael, I am Joe. We'll catch you back here on Wednesday. Stay locked in, Grizzlies fans. As August concludes, September approaches. The NBA season is close at hand. Not really, but it will be eventually. Stick around.